line of speakers who will be taking us through various topics on health, air pollution, and environmental sustainability. So before I take us further, I would like us to, I will share my screen now, and I would like us to scan the QR code on the screen. Yeah, so it is the program, so we can scan and have the program. So to kick off, I'll be inviting the mastermind behind this conference, Wumi Ogunde, but before she comes up, I'll be taking her profile. So Wumi Ogunde is an engineer with a passion for people and knowledge. She has a bachelor's degree in automatic control systems engineering from the University of Sheffield, UK, and an MSc in manufacturing systems engineering from the University of Warwick. She is an advocate of continuous learning. She completed the Harvard Business School training on entrepreneurship in emerging Africa, and she is currently pursuing a PhD in engineering focused on data-driven analysis and modeling for a circular plastic economy at the University of Warwick, United Kingdom. She is also a certified net zero analyst. Wumi has over 12 years of experience in the manufacturing, recycling, and sustainability industry. She started her career as an engineer in a plastic manufacturing company. She is now a serial entrepreneur and has founded Polcon Technology, EMR Consult, Women for Sustainability Africa, and Ecopron, amongst others. She has received various awards and is a member of the Recycler Association of Nigeria, an associate member of WIMBIS, and a Mandela Washington Fellow. She is the convener of the International Pollution Control Conference, Polcon. Please, with some reactions, excitement, and clap emojis in the chat box, I welcome Ms. Wumi Ogunde.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I would like to, so as we go into, the welcome address, please scan the QR code for today, and so that we can follow the program. And we're so excited to have every single one of you here. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Like the host of today has said, my name is Wumi Ogunde, and I'm incredibly honored to welcome you all to the third edition of the Pollution Control Conference 2024. Polcon is an annual gathering that seeks to provide opportunity to explore issues of mutual concern, exchange knowledge, ideas, and of course, generate solutions that can tackle pollution in Nigeria. The vision for Polcon is to draw attention to areas that are often left out in discussion, and I'm glad that we are setting the pace for this. Today, as we gather to draw attention to one of the most critical but overlooked challenge of our time, air pollution. Interestingly, this ties to some of the ongoing conversation at the current Climate Week in New York. Air pollution is a major risk and affects every major health risk that affects every single one of us, whether we realize it or not. We don't talk enough about air pollution, and often we assume that air pollution only affects us outdoors, where we have car emission, industrial activities, waste burning, which we physically see which fills the air. But we don't also talk about air pollution indoors. We only focus on the outdoor emission. And studies have also shown that indoor pollution can affect us even 5 times more than outdoor pollution. I want that to sink in a bit, and let us think about that for a moment. The places that we consider to be safe space for us, our homes, our schools, our workplace, could be causing us harm every single day. Worldwide, according to the World Health Organization, air pollution is responsible for 7 to 8 million premature deaths annually. This means millions of lives cut short as a result of basically the air that we breathe. And this is not just the statistics, it's the harsh reality and the harsh reminder that we need to act now. And that is very, very important. And that's why our theme for this year, Polcon 2024, is the pathway for achieving cleaner air and a sustainable future. This challenges all of us to find actionable, equitable solutions to improving public health and taking a step towards speeding up climate action. We have expert speakers lined up. Our keynote speaker, who is Dr. Babatunde Ajayi, the current General Manager of LASEPA. Thank you so much for being here. And a special presentation by Dr. Agnes, who is the CEO of Global Black Maternal Health UK, who will take us on a journey of the amazing work that they have done in this space and all over the world. And of course, our expert panelists who will bring invaluable perspective to the conversation of today. As I reflect on the journey and the progress that we have made so far, when we started in Oriental in Lagos with over 200 guests in attendance, joined by expert speakers, Dr. Oluwatomi Adeyemi, Mrs. Arese, the former Permanent Secretary for Environment, and the host of others. And of course, our second edition also joined by Pearl Ozukwe, who is the current Director of Forward Africa, Dr. Dolakwe Fashawe, and amongst other speakers. You know, I'd like to also just welcome everyone who has taken time to join us today from all of their busy schedules. Thank you all so much for joining Polcon 2024, and together we can find a pathway for achieving cleaner air and sustainable future. Thank you very much and welcome. Thank you, Helen. All right, so we'll go. Yes, thank you, Helen. So we'll go right into welcoming the next program, our keynote speaker for today, who is Dr. Babatunde Ajayi. Please, can we have his profile up? All right, so I think we'll just read that off here. All right, thank you. So we'll just welcome our keynote speaker, who is Dr. Babatunde Ajayi, who has joined us. He's the current General Manager of Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. He's an astute and result-driven environmental health physician. Dr. Babatunde Ajayi has obtained his Bachelor's of Medicine and Surgery degree from Lagos State University, a master's degree in public health in disaster from the University of Leuven in Belgium, and an MBA at Warwick Business School. As General Manager of LASEPA, he has led the charge on environmental protection with priorities in noise pollution control, greenhouse gas emission, documentation, green energy, and industry. Dr. Ajayi worked as the special assistant to the governor of Lagos State on health, where he led the COVID-19 oxygen strategy for the state. Dr. Babatunde Ajayi is an analytic and an adventurous man known for adding value to system and organization with vision of making a revolutionary global impact. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. We're happy to have you. Can you hear us, sir? Thank you. You're on mute if you can hear us.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, can you hear us? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ayodele Osho.
Okay. Good
I'm
morning.
representing the LASEPA, Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency.
Thank you.
I'm the Director of Air Quality and Emission Control Unit. I think he's there with us, but he's also in a meeting with the governor right now. Maybe that's why he couldn't attend to the call right now, but he will soon be out and join you.
That's fine. I think what we'll do, we'll just move to the next panel discussion, and then we will just take a session once he comes back. So I would hand back
Thank you.
to Helen, who will then introduce our next panel conversation. Okay. All right. So thank you. Thank you so much. I think we'll get back to him. So our next panel conversation is the first discussion for today, where we are assessing the current state of pollution in Nigeria, impacts of public health, and pathway to solution. So I would hand over to, I would like to introduce Adeshola Adegeye, who is our moderator for this panel discussion. Adeshola is a sustainability consultant and a technical sales engineer, currently serving as the public relation officer of the Providence Green Club of Lagos. She's also an alumni of the Girl Movers, a global leadership program for young female change makers in Africa. Adeshola is the founder of Green with Green, EcoBees in 2021, a social enterprise offering eco-friendly alternative to single-use plastic. She has been recognized as one of the African most influential women of our time. So we're welcome, Adeshola. I will share the screen for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rumi, for that warm introduction. I'm super excited for the first panel session, and we have two amazing speakers for this session. I'd like to see all our reactions in the chat box. If you have questions, comments during this session, please drop in the chat box as well. And of course, I want to see your energy. I want to feel your energy in the chat box via your reactions and, and all of that. So briefly, I'll just read the bio of firstly, this panel session is going to be talking about assessing the current state of air pollution in Nigeria, the impact on public health, and pathways to solution. And just like I said, we're having two amazing speakers, and one of them is Dr. Oluwatomi Kogo, and she's the managing director of Iwoso Wellness Center and Iwoso Lagoon Outpatient Clinic. She's highly trained professional with a diverse background in healthcare management and administration across notable brands in modern healthcare space. She is also a health coach with a strong passion for wellness. She obtained a medical degree from the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and an MBA in International Healthcare Management from the University of Aberdeen, UK. She is a member of the American College of Healthcare Executives, Society of Lifestyle Medicine of Nigeria, WIMBIZ, Healthcare Federation of Nigeria, and Society for Quality in Healthcare. Please, with your reaction, a round of applause, kindly welcome Dr. Oluwatomi Kogo. Thank you, thank you. And we move to, I often call you my essay. We move to Dr. Femi Ido Adegoke, MCIWM. Of course, the feathers on his caps are quite a lot. He's a chartered waste and environmental sustainability expert. I'm going to take that again. He's a chartered waste and environmental sustainability expert with over 20 years of experience in UK and Nigeria. 20 years is no joke, guys. Dr. Idowu Adegoke is a co-founder and executive director of EcoVerities Environmental Technology Limited and managing director of Metris Planet Environmental Management Limited. He currently serves as a special assistant to the Minister of Environment. I think it's off the screen now. Okay, great, thank you. He currently serves as a special assistant to the Minister of State for Environment, Nigeria, and thematic lead for circular economy at the NESG Sustainability Policy Commission. Please join your hands as we welcome Dr. Femi Idowu Adegoke, MCIWM. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Okay, great. I'm loving the reactions. Thank you. The energy in the room is, great. Thank you, Abubakar. Thank you, everyone, for your reactions. So we'll just go straight into the business of today. Just like I said, the panel session for the first panel session, we'll be talking about assessing the current state of air pollution in Nigeria, impact on public health, and pathways to solutions. So briefly, just to set the tone for this session again. So I'd just like to have like a bit of reaction from Dr. Tomi and Dr. Femi in terms of, like a general overview question, on air pollution. So I'd say, like, what's your own understanding, of air pollution? Like, how would you define air pollution? And what's your own understanding, just to set the tone, for in like 2-3 seconds from Dr. Tomi and Dr. Femi. Dr. Tomi will be going first. So, ladies, so just a brief overview, what do you understand by air pollution in 2 seconds, in 2 sentences. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Tomi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Adeshala. Thank you so much for the introduction. For me, I would say it's not air pollution is something that is not so talked about, and it causes significant health impact that we all need to know. That is my 2 sentences.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Dr. Femi. Just air pollution in 2 sentences.
Okay, what I'll say is, for us to be healthy, we must breathe healthy air. So we must all invest in clean air now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for that short definition. So just to set the tone again, so what key sources of air pollution should we be aware of around the world today, especially in Nigeria? We're making Nigeria our focus, and in urban and rural environments, and how has this situation evolved, over the last decade? So I'll take that again. What key sources of air pollution should we be aware of, especially in Nigeria, and how has this situation evolved over the last decade? I'll go with Dr. Femi first this time.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, there are various sources of air pollution, and one that is most common, and I have always talked about it, and I remember in the last Clean Air Day that the Federal Ministry of Environment celebrated earlier this month. Majorly in Nigeria, it is vehicular emission. Vehicular emission, because we have so much vehicles that are ill maintained, and a lot of our vehicles are either second hand or third hand tokumbo, as we normally call them. They are already in their end of life, and they come here, and you can even see it while you're driving. You see the toxic emission that comes and pollutes our immediate environment. And also open burning of waste, which is something that, yeah, in the last few years, we've seen reduction in that in some part of Nigeria. But in most part of Nigeria, this is still being practiced. And it's a lot of contribution to air pollution, which leads to, which affects the human health in Nigeria and leads to, most times, leads to death prematurely. I think I'll stop for now. Let me just mention those two and leave and stop now.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Femi. I mean, vehicular pollution, of course, they are ill-maintained, and our vehicles, we take them as second hand, third hand, and all of that, and so thank you very much for that. I will move to Dr. Tomi. Again, I take the questions. What are the key sources of air pollution, and how has this situation, evolved over the last decade? Nigeria being, the focus.
Okay, so a very peculiar one for our environment is generators. Generators, they emit so much pollutant into the air, and especially because, one, we don't have adequate power supply, so everybody has, even in the very densely populated low-income areas, they have the I better pass my neighbor kind of generators. And these generators actually emit a lot of gas that can have significant health impacts to us. And the particles they emit are really small. So people just feel, oh, we're fine. So far we have power, not realizing the damages that are being done from these small generators. And then cooking gas as well. Cooking, not the gas now, but the smoke from kerosene use, cooking in the house, those are sources of air pollution that we need to be aware of. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, when it comes to energy and power, we still have a long way to go in Nigeria. And I mean, that's why, these conversations are also like very important. So I'll be directing my next question to Dr. Tomi. And it says, with over 155,000 premature deaths per 100,000 due to air pollution across Africa, and 191,000 deaths specifically in Nigeria yearly, could you elaborate on the major health effects of air pollution in Nigeria, particularly in densely populated cities such as Lagos and Port Harcourt, and explain how these effects are critically detrimental to public health?
Okay, so without,
okay.
Yes, practical, very, very much. So without focusing on these densely populated areas, it would be good for us to set the tone and let everybody know that air pollution can affect everybody, whether you're living in a rich area, in a poor area, it can affect everybody. But it is worse in these densely populated areas because then the quantity of pollutants are more, because you probably have more cars on the road, you have them burning, especially in Port Harcourt where you have the oil and gas companies, then you have particles, emission from different sources, from the carbon and all of the things that they do, from diesel and all the things. So without focusing on this densely populated areas, it would be good to know that air pollution can affect everybody. And the significant health impacts we get from air pollution are, it would affect the lungs, it would affect the heart, it would affect the brain. So air pollution would affect the lungs. It will deposit those fine particles in the lungs that can cause inflammation, chronic inflammation to our blood vessels, thereby leading to cardiovascular diseases such as stroke and heart attack. Unbelievable that air pollution can lead to heart attack. A lot of us believe what can lead to heart attack are things like maybe consuming food high in cholesterol or not monitoring your blood pressure. But it is also significant and important to know that air pollution can also have this kind of effect, because it will cause chronic inflammation to the lining of the arteries, which can block blood from flowing freely, thereby leading to heart attack and ischemic heart disease, stroke, people developing stroke. So you're wondering, I don't have high blood pressure. So when patients come and say, oh, this person has a stroke, and you're wondering, oh, blood pressure has been normal, what else can it be? What else could have led to that condition? We are not really focusing on that. Our focus right now in the world, I would say, is to focus on things that, what are the obvious things that can lead to cardiovascular disease, but it is of significance now that air pollution can lead to that. So moving on from heart diseases, we also have lung diseases, the lung cancer. It's also important that it exacerbates the risk of having breast cancer. Imagine that. Because it will block the lymphatic drainage. So air pollution is so critical, it is so important. And thank you, Wumi, for putting this together. I'm very happy. It has really opened my mind when I went to research. I mean, there were so many things I learned from just trying to read around air pollution. And this is not an area I particularly focus on, really. But this has really enlightened me, I must say. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the panelist. So air pollution can exacerbate the risk of breast cancer. It can increase the risk of having stroke, of lung cancer. Air pollution, okay, in the simplest forms, you have irritation to your eyes, to the throat, lower respiratory infections, flu-like symptoms, Air pollution can also cause damages to the eyes. We didn't know, or I mean, not like we didn't know, but we weren't focusing on things that air pollution can affect, or organs that air pollution can affect. So air pollution, it's important that we have this kind of conference more often to actually educate, enlighten people, to let them know that we must have clean air quality at all times. We must reduce carbon emission, we must reduce air pollutants, so that we can all live better quality of lives and longer lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, in terms of reducing carbon emission, that takes me to my next question. But just before that, I mean, I'll be moving to Dr. Femi now. But just before that, I mean, air pollution is no respecter of persons. So whether you're rich, whether you're poor, it affects everybody. So I think that was just like it was so profound. And thank you for also mentioning, in terms of air pollution affecting our lungs, exacerbating, cancer, and affecting the eyes and all of that. So I mean, just before we started this session, where we mentioned that we even when we pay attention to the outdoor pollution, even in our houses, like we have polluted air indoors. So I think that's also very important that we while we watch outside, we also have to check around, even in our houses, when it comes to air pollution. So thank you once again, Doctor. So now we move to Dr. Femi. What is the relationship between air pollution and climate change? Like, where did they correlate? Where did they meet? Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. So air pollution generally is the release of emission to the atmosphere, toxic emission from sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, methane gases. Once we emit that into the atmosphere, these are gases that most of them are gases that we call greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases are primary cause of climate change because it's warming up the ozone layers and the earth is warming up. And all these cumulatively over time results in different climate change impact, excessive rainfall, which leads to flooding, desertification, which leads also to shortage in food insecurity, and all of that. So it's emission. Air pollution is air emission. I wrote something down. Let me quickly read that to you. It says air pollution in Nigeria is an escalating public health issue. We shouldn't just treat it as an environmental issue. It's an environmental issue that is escalating our public health issue, driven by a combination of urbanization, industrial growth, deforestation, and energy consumption from fossil fuels. So if we understand these basics, then all of us it's everyone's responsibility to begin to mitigate the impact on our public health. And it is said by WHO that children in Nigeria are particularly vulnerable to air pollution, with increased risk in pneumonia, impaired lung development, and asthma. The combination of household pollution, like Dr. Tomi said earlier on, we focus more on other air pollution that we believe we can see, but there are air pollution within our own space that we can't even see with our naked eyes that have greater impact on our health. Poor ambient air quality places, many children are at risk of premature death or lifelong health challenges. And we can talk about that all day long. So all this, back to your question, is a function of negligence, irresponsibility, lack of social social infrastructures that makes people to find unsustainable alternatives. For example, when Dr. Tomi was speaking, she talked about the very obvious one with us. These small household generators are better past my neighbor. The 1 kVA, 2 kVA. We cannot shy away from the truth that we've recorded deaths. Some are on the news, but most don't even make the news. People who die because they're trying to create energy at home using a better past my neighbor, and they get suffocated by the emission from the generator that's supposed to give them energy, and eventually taking their lives. So it is because we do not have sustainable energy supply. We do not have sustainable cooking sources. That's why people will resort to cutting down wood, cutting down trees, and using it as cooking wood to make food, because food comes, they have to survive. But not knowing, when you cut down these trees, you are exposing the environment to danger of climate change. And then you cooking with it, you are emitting carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide to the atmosphere. So it's a combination of all this over time that has led to what we're facing today globally, the climate change challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Femi. I mean, of course, just like you said, there's a correlation, just like you've explained, there's a correlation between, air pollution and climate change. To lead me to the next question for you, Dr. Femi. So would you say the current air quality monitoring system in identifying pollution levels, especially like in hotspots in Nigeria, would you say it's effective? Like how we measure, our air, the quality of air, and pollution levels in Nigeria, would you say it is effective? And do we even have, do we do it? And, is it effective? Dr. Femi, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. The National Environmental Standard and Regulation Enforcement Agency, NESRA, is saddled with the responsibility at the national level to regulate air quality, air pollution, environmental regulations generally. But that is cascaded down to subnationals. And I can tell you categorically, if we take individually, we'll look at, okay, Lagos State and maybe 1 or 2 other states are doing air quality monitoring, air quality information, monitoring and evaluation, and even researches. But don't forget that we have 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. That makes it 37. So if we're talking about only 1 or 2 states or 3 states who are reporting air quality measurements or monitoring their air quality, we're not doing well. I must tell you the truth. We're not doing well. And the reason why we're not doing well is we need stricter enforcement. We need stricter regulatory enforcement. The enforcement laws, regulations are there, but it needs to be cascaded down to the subnational for it to be properly enforced. I know that the Nigeria and Lagos State and some private sectors are working on a new air quality monitoring system, but that is basically, I think basically that is looking at more industrial monitoring. One of the things that the Federal Ministry of Environment has done in recent time is to come out with clean cooking policy, to take about 10 million Nigerians to have clean cooking stove. So that also, when that is properly implemented, it will go a long way to reduce household air pollution. Also, more needs to be done in the areas of alternative energy. Our energy target of 2060 we need to have the implementation plan and milestones that needs to be achieved at time per se, because there is a global agenda to reduce air pollution by 50% by 2030. Can Nigeria achieve that? I'll tell you, capital N-O, no, as we at the state we are presently. But that notwithstanding, like I said, we need more regulation and policy enforcement, transition to cleaner energy. Like I said earlier on, we need improved public transport system so that when there is improved public transport system, everyone will not be driving. And ultimately, we need proper urban planning and public awareness campaign on a continuous basis. So in short form, we do not have, we're not doing well when it comes to air quality monitoring as a country. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I mean, thank you for your openness and your sincerity, because that's just true. I think we have more in the industrial areas where, manufacturing companies monitor, the quality of their hair, and noise measurement and a couple of other things. But when it comes to like generally in the public spaces, and some, hotspots, I don't think we're doing so well on that. So thank you for your comments on that. So I move to Dr. Tommy, and then it says that the question is, according to World Health Organization, it is estimated that 7 million people die each year from causes directly attributed to air pollution, 4.2 million from outdoor air pollution, and 3.8 million indoor air pollution. Woo. How can public health systems in Nigeria strengthen early detection and response mechanisms for diseases linked to air pollution, given the significant mortality rates caused by both indoor and outdoor air pollution? Thank you. Over to you, ma'am. You're muted. Please don't forget to drop your questions. You're muted, Dr. Tommy.
Okay, apologies. Yes, thank you, Adeshola. So I said we all have to do the work together. We can't leave it to the government. We can't leave it to somebody to come and do it for us. It has to start from us, and then we'll take it to the local level to the national level. And that is with what we're doing today, creating better awareness and such that everybody that attended, that participated in this conference today will be an advocate to say, you know what, we need to reduce or stop. If it's possible for us to totally stop, that would be great, but I don't think that will come in the immediate. But what can we do? Enlighten people, let people know the right things to do, what they should be cooking with, the cars, how cars are emitting carbon. And it's good to know that now part of the sustainability developmental goal is for us to measure the amount of carbon our generators emit within corporate organizations. So that is good, so that we can know if your generator is emitting too much, you'll be able to quickly work on it and effect some changes. Okay, so I'll bring it home. I'll make it very practical. I have a generator in my office. that was emitting so much smoke. And funny enough, the people from Lagos State came to take measurement to see. I was surprised. It was like, oh, so who alerted them? So something is being done locally and the Lagos State. But like Dr. Femi said, is it being done out of Lagos in other states in the country? So we need to start from advocacy is very important. We need to do the work together. A better past my neighbor. We all need to raise awareness and let people know what this pollutions can do to us. It's not one person, and that's another thing. We all breathe this air. So somebody creating air pollution can cause damages far and wide beyond what we can even imagine. So we need to know. So it's not the person that bought the my neighbor, or it's not the person that has the bad car. It would affect everybody. Everybody that is breathing in that air will be affected. So we all need to do that. So it starts from us, from within. Then locally, local government, they need to help us. State government has to help us. The government at large, federal government has to help us. So for me, education, and then putting sustainable measures in place, clean energy, that has to be in place. And then for the vulnerable people, the pregnant women, the elderly, we need to watch after them. We need to look after them. We need to let them know the damages these things can cause to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, it's actually very appalling because sometimes you find out that even like government vehicles, the BRTs, even some police vans, you find out that the smoke that comes out from their vehicles sometimes, or you visit their maybe some offices, some government agency, offices, and you will find out that the smoke, their generator is not, they're not even being compliant. So it is actually very worrisome. And I wish we had like, of course, we have someone from the government here with us. So, my essay, please, these are like we have some questions which we'll read after the session. So I'll just briefly, because of our time, we are running out of time, so I'll just merge like two questions together for Dr. Femi shortly. So it says, what role do weather patterns, geography, and industrial practices play in air pollution levels across different regions of the country? What role do weather patterns, geography, and industrial practices play in air pollution levels across different regions of the country? I would like you to answer in just 30 to 1 minute. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Femi.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, the weather patterns and geography plays a vital role in air pollution in Nigeria. I'll give two examples: the arid northern part of Nigeria, and the coastal areas of Nigeria, which Lagos is one of them. For example, the dust from the arid north, where there is a desertification, there is low vegetation cover. So, and because of its closeness to the Sahara Desert, so the breeze coming from the Sahara Desert raises the dust. So there's always a dust cover, particulate matters, which pollutes the air majorly in the arid north. And also some parts of the north, like Kano State, the overpopulation, the urban planning also contributes to a lot of air pollution in that part of the country. So bringing it down to the coastal area, the good thing about the coastal area is the breeze from the coast can actually help wash some of these emissions from the low level air emission can actually be cleaned up with the coastal breeze, because coastal breeze are mostly natural breeze, but also because the southern coastal parts have quite a bit of a vegetation cover as well. Some of these emissions, like the CO2, are taken up by our vegetation covers. So that also helps, but that notwithstanding, the lack of proper urban planning, as I said earlier on, the lack of air quality monitoring and research, as said, also ultimately the lack of awareness, which has led to more of open burning of waste in some southern parts, and the release of particulate matter. Yeah, the release of particulate matter contributes a lot to the to air pollution in those societies.
Absolutely.
So we can see that geography has a lot to play in air pollution, mitigating and combating it. Also, finally, I want to talk about the rainfall. When you look at the rainfall patterns, also helps to manage air pollution in different regions in the country. Thank you.
So absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Femi. I mean, there's a great correlation, in terms of weather patterns and air pollution. So I'll be moving to Dr. Tomi. Are you still with us, ma'am? Okay, great. So,
yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So based on your experience, are there particular populations such as maybe children, elderly individuals, or maybe people with pre-existing health conditions that are especially vulnerable to the effect of air pollution? And if so, how do they differ when addressing and mitigating these health impacts?
Yes, thank you, Adeshala. So the children are particularly prone to air pollution effect, and the children, the elderly, and even the pregnant women. Do you know that a pregnant woman can affect, if a pregnant woman inhales pollutants in the air, that can affect the unborn child, and it can lead to stillbirth, premature birth. It can lead to cognitive development, impairment in cognitive functions, and all. So yes, these people are particularly prone to air pollution, and we need to protect them. And then those with existing comorbidities, like we say in medicine, so pre-existing conditions like those with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, such as chronic bronchitis. There are some people who just have chronic bronchitis, and those with asthma. I mean, we know I mean, 1 out of 5 children has asthma. So those with asthma, they're particularly prone to air pollution, and they tend to flare. They tend to have crises during, you see, once the weather changes, they tend to have more crises. During the Harmattan, once it is rainy season, they tend to have more crises. So yes, we need to protect them. We need to let people know that because these people are amongst the population, we need to protect them and be aware that whatever we emit in the air can affect this group of people, and it can affect them badly. So yes, we need to protect
for that short and sourcing answer. So just to round off, what's immediate, Dr. Tomi, still you, what immediate and practical actions can individuals and various sectors take to reduce air pollution and its impacts on public health? So what are the immediate and practical actions that we should take?
Like I said, immediate and practical actions that I'd mentioned before will be from one, educating people, because I realize that people don't know, because they don't know, so they don't tend to do better. Once you know, you will do better. So this kind of conferences to educate, to create awareness, and to let people know how the air can be polluted is fantastic. So we need to create or increase advocacy. And then 2 will be for people who already, for the vulnerable, I would say, you can wear face mask during weather changes so that they are not they can actually protect themselves from this air pollution. Although, I mean, in 2020, we were all wearing masks, and so that is long gone, but it's not unusual for people to wear masks again. So once you see you have some flu-like symptoms, just wear a mask, or you need to just protect yourself so that you are not exposed to more damages within the body. So for me, I would say education. Let's clean up the environment. Let's keep the environment clean. And so we just need to let people understand what the sources and how we can improve their health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tommy. So, in 2 sentences, Dr. Femi, from an environmental perspective, what should be the way forward to reduce air pollution in Nigeria? What should be the way forward?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So the way forward for me, I will re-emphasize what she said about education. Public education is the baseline. We must have constant and continuous public education. 2, sustainable development practices must be a must. Sustainable development practices, and what I mean, as simple as sustainable waste management, separating your waste at source and waste not ending up at the dump site, especially your organic waste. Organic waste that are left open at the dump site emit methane gases, which pollutes the environment, and we have all these foul smells around our dump sites, which are mostly from our organic waste. And also, we must adopt technology. We must adopt technology immediately, and ultimately a proper regulatory efforts, concerted efforts towards regulation. Enforcing the regulations must be in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, our speakers, panelists. Thank you, everyone. We have some questions that I'll just be reading out shortly because of our time. So it says, I think this should be to Dr. Femi. It says, okay, just a moment. It says, okay, I want to find out if gas flaring from our refineries have stopped. I believe that these tend to reduce the air quality. I want to find out if the new Dangote refinery has improved methods and are not involved in gas flaring. That's from Fidelis. I think should I just read? Okay, I think we can go ahead to answer that while I hold on the next one.
Okay. There is a gas agenda for Nigeria by this new administration. So rather than flare the gas, we can actually capture the gas and use the gas for our as a transition energy. And one of that is earlier this year, Total Energy shut down one of his gas flaring stations. It was closed down. So yes, it's not totally, gas flaring has not totally stopped, but it's the stopping or minimizing gas flaring in Nigeria is on the agenda and is going on in phase by phase. It's not a one-time thing that we didn't get there one day. So it's going to take a process. But I can tell you, you can find out Total Energy has shut down one of its gas flaring stations. So, and that's earlier this year. And that's the process that the government is going to shut down the gas flaring and convert that gas into its transition fuel. And with Dangote refinery, I cannot say authoritatively, but I believe because it's a new refinery, it must have some gas capture clean system in place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Femi. Just to quickly add, there is just like you mentioned, there's an agenda and there's a project, the gas flare commercialization project. That's I think there was even a meeting on that like recently, last month or 2 months ago, where it was launched. So there is also that going on. So in Nigeria, I'm not sure, we have not stopped flaring. Actually, we have not stopped flaring. I think there is also an agenda for, is it 2060 now, if I'm not wrong, where we hope to stop flaring. And there are also some individual companies that also set like different targets for themselves, when they're going to stop flaring. I know of the Steppart Energy, I think they plan to stop flaring like soon. That's if they've not stopped, and a couple of other stuff like that. So I'll go to Dr. Tommy. I think this is for you. This is from John. He says okay, what okay, Ms. Wumi talked about air pollution in our houses and the implications. What are they and what factors are responsible for it? So what are the air pollution indoors and what are the factors that are responsible for it? So over to you, Dr. Tomi.
Like we said, okay, so using kerosene will emit bad pollutants into the air. Using charcoal, so those are kind of the sources of indoor air pollution. So you have charcoal, grilling, where you constantly grill and use charcoal, wood cooking, when you use wood to cook. Dr. Femi had mentioned that using kerosene, those kind of fuel will release pollutants into the air, and we just need to be aware.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tomi. Because of our time, I may not take all the questions, but this one looks interesting from Onan Musi Babajide Abayomi. It says, does carbon sinks and carbon store truly help absorb the air pollution in the environment? And to what extent is carbon sinks and storage used in Nigeria? Or do we have updated technologies we can use to evacuate the pollution from the atmosphere to help reduce greenhouse gases and ozone layer depletion? Dr. Femi, I think this is for you to know, or I don't know, Dr. Tomi, you can also go for it. Does carbon sinks and carbon truly help absorb the air pollution? Or is it just maybe carbon alone, as the name sounds, or in the environment? And to what extent, is carbon sinks being used in Nigeria? Or are there any
That question is for Dr. Femi. That question is for Dr. Femi.
So does carbon sinks, does it help with air pollution?
Yeah, the first question is, does it help? It does help in air pollution. And what that simply means is we must first, like I always say, before you think about treatment or capture, prevention is the ultimate. And because Nigeria, we are a nation with a lot of biodiversity. We have what we call vegetation in the southern part of Nigeria. And that's why there has been advocacy towards tree planting, because the carbon that we release to the atmosphere, the CO2, is actually what the vegetation, the plants, the trees feed on, and they release oxygen back. So yes, it is important. But first, what we need to do is, can we prevent the release of these methane gases, greenhouse gases, which consist of CO2, methane, hydrogen sulfide, nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide? Are we able to reduce the emissions? That's the first thing. Can we prevent it? So it is when you have done everything possible to reduce or prevent the emission in the first place, that you now look at the alternative, the next phase, which is to capture. Yes, it is ultimately used. And if you remember, I mentioned adopting the use of technologies, cleaner technologies. And also, even for existing manufacturers, they can begin to have what we call the flue gas chamber that captures the gas that is released from their operation. That can actually be captured with a system, the flue gas chamber. So yes, it is, but in Nigeria, we're not there yet. But that doesn't mean we should stay where we are. We need to make efforts to reduce industrial air pollution, household air pollution, vehicular air pollution, by all what we've been saying since we started this discussion. We must transition to clean public transportation. We must look for proper mass transit movement. We must develop the rail system that can take hundreds of thousands of people, rather than everybody using their small cars, the coropace, the tricycle, the motorbikes, the motorcycles. I know that is what people have now, but there is a concerted effort there must be a concerted effort to move away from that. And that's one of the plans that we've talked about, that the government is looking at having the gas that has been flared for over 6 decades, converting gas flaring to transition energy for the country, for both for transportation and for industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Femi and Dr. Tomi. I think with this, we can't take any more questions because of our time. With this, we've come just to wrap it up. Some of the questions that have been asked, actually, I think some of the answers provided by our panelists, it has been incorporated in it somehow. There's one from Echo Wave Radio that says, what organization is in charge of enforcement and measurement? I think Dr. Femi also mentioned at the beginning of his of the session that NESRA helps, that's the National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, so it kind of like helps to measure and enforce as well. And yeah, we can, maybe you can our panelists can also check the Q&A and maybe just answer some of these questions as well because of our time. But just in one sentence, what would you like, if we're not listening from the beginning of this session, what would you want the listeners to go on with? Just in one sentence, what do you want the listeners to go on with concerning air pollution? Dr. Tomi, over to you.
Okay, so I would say air pollution is a significant public health issue, and let's all be aware, let's all start. The change needs to start with us. Let's do whatever it takes to ensure we have clean energy, clean energy around us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Tomi. And over to you, Dr. Femi, just in one sentence, 1 or 2 sentences.
Oh, okay, thank you, Adeshola. So what I'll say to us is a holistic approach that combines government regulation with community participation and private sector's engagement is essential for improving air quality in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. With
Thank
this,
you
we have
very
come
much.
to the end of the first panel session. Thank you so much, Dr. Tomi. It was so insightful and educative. I mean, from air pollution causing cancer and not just affecting the rich alone or us outside. So even if you're inside your house, you can also be prone, to air pollution. So thank you so much, Dr. Femi, for helping us to, check, how air pollution is linked to climate change and, also other things. Thank you for bringing me your government perspective and, private sector, merging it together. Basically, it was so insightful and I thoroughly enjoyed this session. Thank you. And over to you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was quite insightful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Femi. Thank you, Dr. Tomi. Thank you, Adeshola. And we'll move to our next session. It's a special presentation by Dr. Agnes Agepong. So I'll be taking her, I'll be reading her profile shortly.
Hello.
Can we have her profile on the screen? Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Agnes is the founder and CEO of Global Black Maternal Health. She is a maternal health advocate and former head of engagement at a national charity. Her work has been recognized by Beyonce and supported by the Mayor of London and the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Agnes plays a key role in shaping healthcare policy through her involvement in NHS England's Maternity Transformation Programme. She serves on various strategy committees for maternal and perinatal mental health. She is involved in British Medical Association, Royal College of Midwifery, NHS, and more. Please welcome Dr. Agnes Agepong.
Hello, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I'm a bit jealous because my background was not working, so I have to have the plain black one, but we are here. Let me just, I'll share my presentation. Let me just get it up. I hope we are all well today. Yeah. I'm just going to do the wider screen. I'm not a technical person, but I know you'll be bearing with me. Edit. Can you see it all from large screen? It's not, okay. You can see from the beginning, yes? Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for that introduction. Before I give an overview of kind of my background and what led me to do my work, I just want to introduce 3 very important people, probably my main job. So my main job is I'm a mother. I have 3 children. The middle one there is the boss of the boss. If you have a firstborn daughter and she's the eldest, you know what I'm talking about. And I have my 2 boys, Ethan and Eli. And prior to having children, I'll be very honest with you, things around air pollution, air quality, all of these aspects, it wasn't even something that was on my radar, right? Also, even being a maternal health advocate, so I'll speak a little bit about my profile, but I wanted to context here to share my personal story. It wasn't on my radar, but becoming a mother really changed some things a lot. But one being that, first of all, as in the UK, Black women are nearly 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy, twice as well. Actually, now it's nearly 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy, twice as likely to experience a stillbirth. And so I had a really, I didn't have the best experience, particularly with my youngest child, the one on your left with the blue rucksack. I didn't have the best experience. And actually, I thought something really bad would have happened to me or my child. And so when I was at the hospital, I said, I'm not leaving this hospital until I've, spoken to someone, because if you're a mother, you'll know you're going to go home. You won't have time to be writing any long emails, so I needed to speak to somebody. And that started my journey as being a maternal health advocate. Parallel to that, during the time of me giving birth to my youngest child and experiencing that experience, my daughter, who was only 4 or 5 at the time, I was taking her to school, and she was getting really, really, really sick every minute, like going to the doctors, getting really, really sick. And in the space of maybe 9 months, she was hospitalized 3 times. The 3rd time, she had community-acquired pneumonia, which is one of the leading causes of death of children 5 years and under globally. And it was during that time that I found out that she was asthmatic, right? But equally, not just that, what was exacerbating her asthma, and that was air quality, air pollution. And so I was really, really shocked that with all the work that I was doing at the time, leading up to that stage around maternal health, around child health, nobody was talking about the environmental factors that we've heard today from our esteemed panelists and guests that actually contribute to these adverse health impacts. And I know we're having a focus on Nigeria, but it's also to say that this is a global issue. And even us here, whether we're in the West or we're in Africa, we are experiencing that. So one thing about being a mom is that, once my children, anybody that's impacted my children, I really had to step up, and it changed my kind of career trajectory. And I set up the organization, which was Global Black Maternal Health, which has now evolved into Global Child and Maternal Health, which was about putting research back into the hands of Black communities as leaders and change agents. It's a little bit like what I believe it was Dr. Femi was talking about education around these issues. Yeah. Now, one of the big problems is when we're talking about things like air quality, air pollution, who is doing the research for us? Yeah, who is doing the evidence? Who's even finding out about the educational piece? Because before you can educate, so I don't know what's going on here. Before you can educate anybody, you need to first of all find out what is their baseline knowledge, what is their awareness around some of these key issues. That's the first thing, because then your policy and your research and your evidence and your behavioral change can be geared towards. And what we found out is that in the UK, especially particularly around Black women, from whether that's from Ghana, from Nigeria, from the Caribbean, there was a lack of awareness around these adverse impacts of air quality and air pollution. So our first call of action as my organization was to, first of all, do a baseline assessment. We spoke to over 150 families to find out actually what is your awareness, what is your knowledge around these air pollution issues, and how do you view air pollution? I always say, you know, my mom, if you go to her and say, oh, air quality, air pollution, she'll just look at you like, what are you even talking about, you know, or clean air. And if you think about some of your communities in Nigeria and you go to them every day, they are working, they are maybe on the roadside selling their products to eat that day. Their priority is, how will I eat that? By the end of that day, will I even get food? So if you now go to them and say, oh, are you thinking about your air quality and air pollution? You're not going to really engage them because of what their challenges are. So here in the UK, we set about and we created a Black Child Clean Air. And since then, our work has received critical acclaim, featured in the World Health Organization, on international journals. And you probably can see me there with Prince William, on Sky News. I lecture now at King's College, really ensuring that our voices, how we will see air quality and air pollution is centered in these conversations, because until our voices, how we view it, and we're reaching communities at the level that they are at, until that is centered, we will not be able to affect change. And as a result of that work, I mean, in my bio, it spoke about that. We also were recognized in the US by Beyonce, who also gave money to our cause. So Global Black Maternal Health, which is now Global Child and Maternal Health, again, I explained, you know, it's really about Black maternal health disparities. So yes, a lot of our work we do is around the environmental factor, but that's not, the real point is, as a mother and as a businesswoman, I want every single woman, every single family to be able to bring forth life, which is one of the most beautiful gifts that you can have, but to be able to do that in a healthy way. Yeah. And once we've gone through that journey of bringing forth life, we're paying school fees, nursery fees. We want our children to be healthy, right? So that they too can complete the circle of life. That is the crux of what we do. And our vision is to ensure, and I know in the context of the West, we say Black, but actually in the context of Africa, we need to be leading as Africans our story, and it starts with data. Who owns the data? We are not driving forward on the data. The changes that we are seeing, we'll be talking about sustainable, it was Millennial Development Goals, then Sustainable Development Goals, then it might be AI Development Goals, who knows what the next one is, but it will completely be talking about it because we are not leading on that. And so our organization is about doing just that. So maternal health in Africa, you know, globally, a woman dies of pregnancy-related causes every 2 minutes, yeah? And most of these deaths are preventable with the right care and the right time. So this is what we're talking about when we say equity. There are some deaths that will naturally happen. But the fact is, imagine every 2 minutes somebody is dying. That could be somebody's mother, that could be a child, or both, and they are preventable. In the African region, this accounted for 69% of global maternal deaths in 2020. And I want that to sink in, because Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, is not the most populous. If we're looking at India, if we're looking at China. So for our continent to account for more than 69% of those deaths, think about the lives, the future leaders, the innovators that could have come forward as part of that, yeah? Major complications account for almost 75% of maternal deaths, such as severe hemorrhage, infection, high blood pressure during pregnancy, complications during childbirth, and so many more. You might be thinking, okay, we know these stats. What has that got to do with air pollution and air quality? So I'll tell you, I'll give you a small outline. And usually I like to use pictures, but I wanted to make sure that the words are there so you can let that linger in. When we're saying hypertension and preeclampsia, you know, air pollution increases the risk of hypertension during pregnancy, which is a major contributor to maternal deaths in Africa, as we last saw. When we're looking at infections, indoor air pollution from using solid fuels for cooking is common in many African regions. And I know some of my presentees spoke about, you know, cooking. But this increases the risk of respiratory infections during pregnancy and a significant cause of maternal mortality. And I know one of the questions that somebody spoke about was, what are the other sources of indoor air pollution? But it's not just that. Think about the flooding. Think about when it's rainy season, yeah? And think about people's houses when they are getting flooded and then the water is going and their houses are left with damp and mold and all sorts of different aspects, and the houses are not waterproof. The children, the mothers, the women, they are breathing that air. Yeah. So when we're looking at things like stillbirth and miscarriage and, you know, infections and preterm birth, it's all linked into that. It's not just cooking, by the way. Preterm birth, exposure to air pollutants. I mean, one of my colleagues spoke about that. So just for time, I won't go through. Delayed health-seeking behavior. So my daughter, as I said, she got very, very sick. Now, we can say that asthma is, you know, the poor air quality exacerbates that. But our children, we don't even know oftentimes, you know, when they're young, that they even have a respiratory issue. So what then ends up happening is they, whilst they're very young, 0, 1, 2, our children are getting sick. And it's only until 4 or 5 that we realize that actually they have asthma, but they've already been exposed severely. We're looking at low birth weight. We're looking at chronic conditions. So even if we give birth to our children, are our children growing up to be healthy, right? When we're looking at our children, again, respiratory health, impaired lung development, increased child mortality. And one that is, I think, really important for us to know is cognitive and development delays. In the UK, women who are exposed to high levels of air pollution, their children are 3 times more likely to be autistic, right? And so there's one thing that we might think, okay, we've given birth and our wife is okay, or we are okay, our sister is okay. But sometimes we see those children are then struggling in school. And we don't realize that because of the exposure that they've inhaled from in utero, and also in those early years, is actually inhibiting the ability for that child to thrive within their educational setting. Air pollution is stealing the destinies of our children, and it's very important that we are all aware of that. Now, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Yeah, this is the system that we are in. So it's going to take each and every single one of us, yeah, to be able to now come together to say, okay, this is the system. We can look at colonialism, we can look at imperialism, we can look at all the issues as to, we don't have time for that, as to why Africa is where it is. It's documented. But we are now going to need new tools to be able to ensure that our children, our mothers are able to bring forth life, and those children are able to realize their full potential. So the way forward, I think a lot of our colleagues, I'm just looking at time here. I don't want to get a bad reputation for Polcon, so you guys can invite me back. But just as I wrap up, you know, the whole wider system needs to change, right? When we're looking at things like air pollution, when we're looking at things like poverty, when we're looking at things like, if we're looking in Africa, our school system failing and so forth, it's not by accident. A lot of it is by design. And this is just air pollution is just another indicator of the issues of poverty. Now, if we want to go right into it, poverty and lack of awareness and lack of education, right? We need to move forward so that we can have a healthy workforce. Healthy individuals, they're better equipped to contribute to the economic growth and innovation of development. Africa needs that. Improved educational outcomes. We need our children to be able to enter into school, come out and be the next innovators, to be able to put Africa on the right course. If we look at countries like Singapore and many other different countries around the world that was at the same standpoint as Nigeria, as Ghana and so forth, 50, 60 years ago, look at where they are. We need our children to be able to thrive. The reduced healthcare costs, we already know we're in a cost of living crisis globally, right? Can our populations even afford, even if they're alive, and you know, I've spoken about child mortality and maternal health, but even if they're able to overcome that, are they even able to afford the long-term costs that are associated, and just improved quality of life, right? Me, I've got my 3 children. I want about to run after my grandchildren, and by the grace of God, my great-grandchildren, right? So it's not just about, are we alive, but are we able to actually thrive, you know, as we are growing older? You can learn more about the report that we did, which is www.blackchildcleanair.com, and my email address is there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agnes. That was quite insightful. Thank you very much. I don't know, do we have anything from the convener? Okay, because I know she was speaking. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was so excited to have you here, share your work. I think that was so amazing. I don't know if there are questions, so I think we can ask questions. If anyone has any question, can we check, Helen, if there are questions for
Okay,
maybe just 1 or 2 questions, and then we can. I think there's a question on, is it possible for microplastics to get in the air and cause air pollution?
Yeah, I think it was for the previous session.
Okay.
Yes.
Agnes, do you have anything to say on that, or?
No, I don't have anything to say on the microplastics, but I just want to just implore everyone that, you know, this is not air pollution, and conferences like this is not about others. It's actually about ourselves. It's about our families, our mothers, our aunties, our sisters, our fathers, you know. So the small changes that we can do internally, just for our own home, sometimes that is enough to be an advocate, if that, just by changing our outlook. So that's just the message I would like to leave you all with.
Thank you so much. So I think that I will quickly take, unfortunately, the keynote is currently in a meeting with the governor. So this is what happens when you have, you know, people in the public sector, but he's definitely sent a representative who is on the call, who is Mrs. Osho, who will be doing the quick keynotes and message from our keynote speaker. So I don't know if you can quickly unmute yourself, Ma, and if we can hear me, Mrs. Osho.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I really appreciate this conference, this meeting. It's really educative, and mostly the second section is able to put more light into the keynotes that we have. As he said, air pollution is a global concern now. Is a global concern, and the effect is so much on our health due to our activities all over the whole world. And in Africa, we are tending, I think the knowledge is now tending more, that we are now really aware of the impact of the air quality in the atmosphere, especially as related to climate change effects and the global warming. And air quality has been, you know, the major sources of air quality, as I said, is due to our activities, through transportation, energy, through waste. We have through industrial sectors, and also we have through agricultural sectors. These are the 5 major ways in which the global concern have seen the source of air quality, air pollution, you know, in the atmosphere. And this air pollution has a great impact on our health. Is a risk factor of all-cause mortality, and also some specific diseases like the non-communicable diseases. It has shown, studies have shown that is a major risk factor for all these non-communicable diseases. And as the other panelists have said, you know, you have a lot of health impacts due to cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, and most especially our infants, as that woman I just said, the last speaker, the impact is so much on infants and pregnant women, in that because infants breathe 5 times more than the adults. So when the air is polluted, we find that the infants, the children, are most vulnerable to this health impact of air pollution, because they breathe 5 times faster than we adults, and so they are more vulnerable to this. And especially the pregnant one is, because even right in the womb, the effect of air pollution is also on them. And studies have also linked that air pollution has also linked to various cancer diseases. It has linked to various cancer diseases, and it also leads to neurological diseases like mental health. As also air pollution has also found through studies as link health risk to all these factors. But in Africa, as I said, we are more aware now. But even though the awareness is not yet more as we expected, but the government have been trying much. As I am now in the field, and I'm outside, we're installing air quality sensors around within Lagos Metropole. I'm on the field. I'm inside. We just installed one in Jeremy local government in Lagos State. I'm also going around. We're installing about 18 sensors already. For now, we have 30 local sensors already deployed in Lagos State right now, giving us a real-time measurement. Because as they say, what we can measure, we can manage. So for us to even know the baseline, what we have, how can we improve on that? So that's why the Lagos State has put it as major part of things that we need to do that LASEPA, in charge of LASEPA, we are trying to measure real-time measurement on the air quality in our environment. So from there, we can know what we can do, how we can improve our activities in terms of curbing the air pollution in the atmosphere. So the pathway for achieving cleaner air for sustainable future, as Dr. Femi has said, we need transition to cleaner energy. We like renewable energy and also increase our energy efficiency. This is so practical. We need to increase our energy efficiencies in the areas of industry, in our homes, in our transportations. As the other speakers have said, it's not only cooking using charcoal and wood is only source of pollution in our homes. Even all these pesticides that we use, our perfumes, all these things are made up of POPs. We call them the persistent organic matters. They stay long in the atmosphere, and these are the things in our homes that we have them. All our air fresheners, all these things are part of constitute air pollution. So these are the things that many are not aware of, and they will just use them anyhow in their homes, not knowing that there are some people that are allergic to all these things and can easily affect their health. These are the things we need to educate our people more so that we're able to curb the effect of air pollution in the atmosphere. Also, we need to improve on our transportations, as I said, increase the public transport, expand our public transport facilities, and also shift from fossil fuel, the use of fossil fuel by vehicle, to CNGs and to gas, as I said by Dr. Femi. The government is now looking at how to capture our gas instead of gas flaring, where we capture our gas and we now use it as part of cleaner energy, improving our transportations. And we find the government in Nigeria now has provided, maybe subsidized the transition kits to CNG, the use of CNG in our vehicles. These are the things that the government had invested on so that it improves our air quality. We also have recently we launched a Lagos Carbon Registry. We launched Lagos Carbon Registry in Lagos State, whereby we can capture the emissions from the industrial sectors, so that from digital platform we can really know the emissions of each of these industrial facilities in Lagos State. So these are the developments that the government is intervening in terms of curb this air pollution and improve our health. I hope. Thank you, Laura, for this little conversation. Thank you.
Helen, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. We thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you for that session. So we will be going into the second panel discussion, and the topic is from policy to practice, how businesses can lead the way in reducing emissions for safer and healthier cities. And we have the moderator for this session is Tolu Falola. We also have two guest speakers coming into the session, but I'll take the profile for Tolu Falola. Tolulope Falola is a seasoned expert in renewable energy and techno-commercial power management with 17 years of experience across Africa and Europe. Tolulope holds an MBA in International Oil and Gas from the University of Dundee and is a certified professional energy manager, green banking expert, and Six Sigma Green Belt professional. She is also a founding member of the Women in Energy Network, advocating for gender diversity and mentoring young leaders in the industry. Her work spans renewable energy projects in 9 African countries, where she focuses on bridging the energy gap. With some reaction and excitement, let's have Tolulope Falola.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. And I think I would like to say big thank you to the Polcon team, to Ms. Wumi Ogunde and the entire team for bringing this conversation home. I believe that we could not have been, just ruminating on this topic at a better time. For me, I've had an experience that then borderline was a friend of mine that passed away based on ill health, and it was actually based on health quality issues. She was actually asthmatic. So listening to all the other speakers and just thinking back, going back to 2013, where a childhood friend of mine that had asthma had left Nigeria. She moved to the Netherlands, and she only came back to Nigeria for a holiday within 1 week, and she didn't survive the last asthma attack. So I think for me, it really hit home, and I just want to say thank you. And thank you to everyone that has stayed tuned, that has joined us since 11 a.m. that we joined. Without much ado, we'll be going into the session where we'll be discussing our businesses, what we can do in terms of policy and practice, and how Nigerian businesses, what we can do to help them reduce emission. Right. I would like to introduce the two panelists on this session. Sorry, can we have the panelist profile so we can just do the honors of their introduction right now? Right, my first speaker, I will be introducing Mr. Jonathan Obinna Ikeolumba. Mr. Jonathan Obinna is a certified chartered accountant and finance consultant with over 18 years experience across banking, consulting, private sector development, and the academia. His expertise spans corporate reporting, business strategy, costs and management accounting, performance management, project management, and sustainability. He has worked with leading brands such as GT Bank, Access Bank, ICANN, MasterCard Foundation, Google Africa, and the Tony Elumelu Foundation. He is the managing partner at the Office Lord Consulting. He is also a doctoral researcher at Lagos Business School, focusing on carbon accounting, climate finance, and sustainability. And he serves as a faculty member at the Lagos Business School. Please, with warm welcome, can we just give a round of applause for Mr. Jonathan Obinna Ikeolumba as he joins us on this very important discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much. We'd like to say thank you for taking out time to be here with us this afternoon. The second speaker on this panel, we have Dr. Natalie Benish. Please, Natalie, if I did not pronounce that right, I would like you to do the honors of maybe correcting me, but I do hope I did justice to your name. Dr. Natalie is an executive director of Circular Economy Innovation Partnership in Lagos, which focuses on research, advocacy, and programming that promotes circular economy business and investment opportunity in Nigeria. She headed the academic network at the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment in London. She earned a bachelor's degree from McGill University in Canada and a PhD from the London School of Economics in the United Kingdom. She has held teaching and research positions at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, and the University of, sorry, I can't read the last part, but would like to welcome you, very warm welcome to you, Dr. Natalie, and thank you very much for joining us on this panel discussion. Before we go into the panel discussion, I think I would like to share some data with the audience this afternoon, just to also put in perspective, in the context of Nigerian businesses and emission. As we all know that in Nigeria, we definitely, there's a major issue, there's an inadequate supply of power from the national grid. And this means that a significant part of businesses are left to actually power their own, to actually power or generate power for their businesses to run. And Nigeria, we actually have, I think data shows that we have over 60 million small generators, otherwise known as I better pass your neighbor, often used to power household and businesses. And approximately 40 to 60% of Nigerian businesses and households use generators as their primary or backup source, with diesel generators being the most common. As a solar expert, I also run a solar business in Nigeria. We're called Digiscape. And of course, we work with SMEs and household. And I think in the past 7 years, we've worked with over 535 clients ranging from household and businesses. So I think that I'm a very good person to actually just navigate this discussion with, because I'm very aware of the prevalent issues and how businesses contribute to heavy emissions in Nigeria. I mean, a lot of businesses do not even understand they don't even understand the crux and how emissions from diesel generators and petrol generations, what it does to the atmosphere and to the environment, and how it really not just powering their business, but a major part of it is actually endangering lives. Also, data also shows that diesel generators emit at least 2.7 kg of CO2 per liter burnt. So when we have over 60 million generators, so we can actually, if you do the math, you can see that there's a lot of emission. And now, even case in point, I remember carrying out an audit for a client in Port Harcourt. So River State today, we know that they have a prevalent issue of soot, where you cannot even install solar panels, because the solar radiation, you're not going to have good power being generated from the solar panels because of the heavy soot. So we're talking about an entire state being enveloped by soot and emissions. So I believe that we are at that prime time and that intersection of discussing this, and we believe that whatever we discuss here will actually translate into actionable policies. We're going to take it away from here. Without much ado, I'm going to open the floor now and take it to my speakers. Thank you very much once again. And I think the first question I would like to go, I mean, it's Dr. Jonathan, it's ladies first, right? So I'm going to go with Dr. Natalie first, and I'm going to pose the question to Ada. In terms of emission, I would like you to share in 2 minutes what the primary sources of emission is in Nigeria, and from your own research and your own study, which sectors do you believe contribute most to carbon emissions in Nigeria?
You're pinning me for an expert that I probably am not, but I'll do my best. So I think from an emission standpoint, like what you've shared is really, really important, that we're in a country where you don't have a completely functional grid, so the use and reliance on diesel power generators is significant. The other one I think is quite significant is road transport. That again, you have maybe a lax enforcement of emission standards. So you have unroadworthy vehicles on the road in many places, which is very, very challenging to sort of shift away from or transition from. I think another source of emission, well, I mean, and what you've mentioned before, it's the industrial emissions, which is the same issue around, and I think really kudos to WSEPA around all the work they're doing around trying to monitor industrial emissions and control it, because this is like really, really critical to ensuring that there's the enforcement. And then we are very focused on circular economy, so we look a lot around waste management. So and we feel it every day in Lagos, that there's a high proportion of waste that's burned, which also maybe in the data doesn't look like a lot, but the personal stories that were shared here, we feel it, like we smell it every Sunday, the smell of burning plastic. It's something that's very, very, very palpable as well.
The smell of burning plastics. Wow, amazing. Yeah, all right, over to you, Mr. Jonathan.
All right, so same question around major sources of carbon emission, right?
Yes, from your own, yeah.
Okay, I think the biggest one for us really in the country will come from energy, really around most of what I'll call the fossil fuel intensive sectors. So if you think around what we do with our oil and natural gas, even a part around what we do with coal in terms of industries that help with generating energy from coal to oil to natural gas, even link that to even electricity, right? I think that's a strong area where we see a lot of CO2 emission happening in the country. In fact, gas flaring is actually a very big one right now in terms of a big contributor to carbon emission. I wouldn't add to the ones that Dr. Natalie had mentioned, so I'll try and think of other ones. I think broadly our industrialization digitalization as well too. So sectors, I mean, she spoke
Yeah.
about transport, but I think if you think about even construction, right? So we have quite a lot we do around construction in the country. Building and construction, link that to sectors around cement, right? So I think there's a whole lot happening around there. I also think something I found out as well too, because interestingly, I have a research looking at carbon accounting, and I think that around forestry as well too, there's quite a lot of deforestation activities that is going on as well in the country, right? I think that's also contributing a lot to what we find, right? So if we add that to what you have said from waste management, agriculture, there's quite a lot happening in agriculture as well too. So if you add that from waste to industrial to what we do in our energy process, I think you'd largely find the bulk of where our carbon emission is coming from.
Wow. Wow, amazing, amazing. So it's very interesting that you've mentioned all of these different sources. So as in for me, I'm one of the net zero advocates, and we've been on this campaign for net zero. And every time we take this campaign, maybe to companies, multinationals, and even to the government, a lot of times we find people asking those questions. Like, you guys are talking about net zero. Can you talk about the main burdens that Nigerians are facing? It's almost like we don't even recognize that health is wealth, and a lot of these things that we're doing. I mean, when we look at the just energy transition and net zero, it's not just because we want people to go solar or wind and all of that. It's because we know that there are a lot of health implications that surrounds this. And you find Nigerians asking questions like, oh, but we're not emitting, we're not like the UK, we're not like the West. Also, if you look at data from the emission standard, you find out that, okay, African countries are not really they're not part of the major emitters. However, we can actually be one of the major drivers of reducing emissions. And if you look at Africa, we look at Nigeria, as a whole, and the climate and the environment, we need to start talking about these things because it really affects not just businesses, but it affects health. So it feels like there's a gap. There's a gap in awareness. Now, my next question will go to, how can you assess, and I'll go to Mr. Jonathan first, because I mean, you sit on the panel, you're part of the faculty at Lagos Business School. This means that you interact a lot with businesses. So from your own perspective, how would you assess the awareness of these businesses, in recognizing their role in improving air quality, or in recognizing that they actually are emitting and they're actually making they're taking steps to reducing their emissions? What would you say about that? Do you think that there's that awareness already, and do you think they really understand how this impacts the environment?
All right, thank you. So what I can tell you is that so accounting for emissions, right, or reporting on emissions currently as we have it, largely isn't compulsory, right? So because it isn't compulsory, what that also does to the psyche of many businesses is that sometimes there's really what I might call an ignorance that they sort of exhibit towards these things, right? And to that extent, what we do find is that there's not a lot of understanding or not a lot of awareness around the CO2 impact of some businesses. So you find that those sectors we spoke about, so for example, if I take energy, there's quite some regulations at the sectoral level. So if you play in the energy space, right, there's some regulations around trying to understand what your carbon footprint is. So from that perspective, those guys who play in that sector are a bit aware of that. So, but if I look in the totality or look at what percentage that does in terms of as an aggregate understanding of the businesses in the country, I think we have it low. But what I can say is that as there's a move towards the whole idea around sustainability reporting, we'll begin to see a lot more companies putting that and taking that into consideration.
Right. I'm going to come back to that question on sustainability reporting, because I'm going to, data says that we have about 44 million SMEs in Africa. And I know that Nigeria is one of the largest contributors. Now, when we're talking about carbon reporting and sustainability reporting and emissions, I'm going to come back to that question on how are we going to enforce this with SMEs that are still grappling with profitability and a whole lot of other things. What are the incentives, But I'm going to take next question to Dr. Natalie, and it's going to bother on the intersection of profitability for businesses. Of course, every business today exists because they are, I mean, there's benefits and there's profits that they're giving to the stakeholders, and of course also the fact that they exist because there's value that they can derive from the society and value that they can give to society and the stakeholders. And profit is at the intersection of this. Now, profit is a driving factor in business. I would like to ask you, Dr. Natalie, how do you think companies can strike a balance between meeting environmental policies and maintaining profitability while adhering to international emission standards? So we're looking at profitability and we're looking at environmental policies and that intersection. So what do you think businesses, how do you think that they can strike the balance?
I think it's very, very challenging. There's reams of research on this too about this golden business case for this, and there are some examples where you can achieve, like you can get efficiencies, especially there's energy efficiency achieved through like using like kind of technologies to reduce emissions. There are those possibilities, and I think the larger, more resource endowed businesses can capitalize on those. But if you're a smaller business, and I think you talked about the solar issue, this is really, really hard. Like it's not it's not, like buying a solar system. You still need the generator. You need like quite a bit of capital. You need, and then and you need both systems. Like it's not easy. So there are cases where there's definitely like cost savings by introducing energy efficient measures. This requires a certain size of business, I think, really to be able to implement and capitalize on it. For other areas, like what are the two things that businesses need? Like one is like from a policy standpoint, it's a level playing field, right? And one of the challenges in the Nigerian context is like where we do see a lot of very good standards in terms of emissions control, and I don't know necessarily on the reporting side, but there are strong standards. The problem is that these are not like evenly implemented, and it's possible to still continue polluting and using dirty methods to produce, which are cheaper, which then punishes compliant companies. And this in this market where there's not like necessarily like the price is the biggest driver, it is always going to be a challenge. We do see, I think, a little bit more now than we used to, where there are like opportunities, especially with the reduction of fuel subsidies and the increase in fuel costs, that there's like more of an emphasis or a focus on using technologies like solar or biogas, and so there's like there's a market-driven way that's supporting it, but this is still not like we're not at the level we need to be. And I think, as you pointed out, the policy, like it's not just the policy, it's the enforcement of policy so that you have a level market that's going to drive things.
Right. Awesome. Now, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to go back to my question, and my question to be, I'm going to just draw on that, and still just dissecting profitability and the environmental policy. Now, I know that we've seen a lot of businesses in the West trading carbon, so there's like carbon trading and all of that. Now, do you think that this would be like a good incentive? Now, we all know that the cost of shifting to solar, or the cost of adopting renewable energy sources, wind, solar, energy storage, is quite high. And right today, a lot of SMEs are grappling with inadequate supply, but also the alternative is very expensive, right? Do you see how there can be incentives in terms of carbon trading? What is that looking like from the international scene for companies in Europe or in America looking to pay for carbon emissions or to trade and all of that as an incentive for SMEs that want to go solar? So what do we see at that intersection, and how do you think that this can drive profitability, and how do you think that this can be an incentive?
All right. Very good. So what I'll do is I think you've used some different terminologies. I'll
Right.
try and put them together so
Right.
that
Thank you.
we improve understanding. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think so we have some what I'll call market-based instruments we use
Right.
for just ensuring that there's a price on people who emit carbon, right?
Yes.
And a couple of those instruments include things like a carbon tax, a
Yes.
carbon credit,
Yes.
then obviously the concept of trading on carbons, right? So specifically, you spoke about carbon trading, and with carbon trading, what is essentially happening is that entities that emit carbons can actually purchase from entities who actually have a right to emit, but are not currently emitting. Now, the idea is that you want to ensure that those who emit carbons actually pay, right, for doing that. So it's like an instrument that is supposed to checkmate behavior around carbon emission. So the logic, right, might be that ultimately, if people pay, it would incentivize them to reduce their carbon emissions.
Yeah.
There could be views around if those who can afford it, if they keep on paying for the emissions by purchasing carbons or trading on carbons, does it really regulate behavior, right? From that perspective. Why you can argue that the revenues earned by trading on carbon can help the firms who perhaps have sold their rights to do those emission. And there's also the other perspective around behaviors might not have that address in behavior from the perspective of those companies. So take, for example, the oil and gas companies, right?
Yeah.
If a company knows that there's quite a lot of money they can make from doing a lot of exploration, to be honest with you, they're happy to continue to purchase as much carbon credits as they can that can allow them do what they do. It's more like an analysis where they look at it from a financial standpoint. What's the extra cost in purchasing these carbon credit rights versus, how much you're going to make by undergoing those activities that they do. So what I would say is that while you can get revenues from the companies who can sell, right, it still might not have that effect. So there are still views around how effective, but the point is that they pay an extra lot, right, if they're going to continue to emit. So I don't know if I give that a good balance
you
in
did.
terms
Yes,
of,
you did. But and then I think it also just brings me to another question. I'm going to just just be hypothetical here. So if I am Kudirat International and I'm an SME in Nigeria, can I sell carbon credit? Because I'm not using diesel generator or petrol generator again. I shift my energy generating to solar. Now, because I am now using solar, can I then sell carbon credit to a business and as a form of incentive? I can see Dr. Natalie shaking her head because we're talking about profitability, incentives, and at this intersection of environmental policy. So I think a lot of businesses want to know, because one of the questions that I find businesses asking me is, now solar is expensive, renewable energy is expensive. Why do you want me to stop? So if there is that incentive, so maybe you can just tell us if carbon credits can be, it can be globally traded, if there's any way that we can take advantage of this available mechanism, or
okay,
Natalie,
was that okay?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
so
I'll let
I
Bishop
can
with
start. I can start, and then I think Jonathan probably has his
All
opinions
right,
too.
yes,
But I think it's exceptionally hard for a small business to generate the credit. You need like a larger. It costs a lot of money to qualify and be verified to get a credit. But that said, if you are a user of solar, like, it's a way of making the cost of solar cheaper. So there's even, I think, some incredible startups in Nigeria developing technologies to be able to assess the credit. So that would mean that you, as a buyer of solar, can access cheaper energy that is solar. So that it would be the solar provider that's accessing the credit, and not the user or the consumer.
Not the user. Awesome.
Yeah, but the ultimate goal is to make it cheaper and accessible. And we have already in Nigeria really, really incredible startups working on this and developing really great technologies. So so as a small business, no, but like, stay tuned for better prices.
Yes, awesome, Mr. Jonathan.
Okay, so the point I wanted to make was that with carbon trading, The point really is that there are quite a lot of other stakeholders that should be present. So first of all, if you look at it from the perspective of Nigeria, so we've not made a lot of effort yet in terms of the carbon market design, right?
Yeah.
So for example, there are verifiers. I think Dr. Natalie was speaking to that. So to even certify that what you have qualifies for a carbon credit, it needs to go through some verification process, right? We're still trying to work on having that kind of institutions or those kind of institutions locally here, right? We have a couple in Africa, right? But to get those kind of institutions here is also still one issue. But I think the broad thing is that even within the carbon markets, right, you have voluntary markets, right? And while you have the full compulsory ones, and it then depends on if you want to issue carbon credits, right, which of the markets do you want to go for, the voluntary one versus the compulsory one? But the point I think that needs to be made is that really for us here in Nigeria, and which is really the perspective you're speaking from, we've not made a lot of development around those institutions that will guarantee that, and especially around the verification process in itself, before you can even get to a point where you can say, can an SME sell, right, carbon credit? So I think those are some of those issues we're still sort of dealing with right now.
Right. While the conversation is still ongoing, I would like to encourage the participants, the people in the audience, to please, if you have any question, you can start typing your questions in the chat box so that we can come there. We're about to round up with the panelist questions. Yeah, but I would like to maybe just ask a question. What do you see, the future? How would this collaboration between the government agencies and businesses in tackling air policy, in reducing emission? What do you see? What would you say? What kind of policies do you think we can start to execute and implement? We're not just talking about policies that we want to see on paper. For me, I think that we're at this point at the nexus where policies now need to be implemented. And I think that one of the things that will make policies better implemented is to simplify the policy. So for everyone on this call, Dr. Natalie, maybe I'll start with you. How do you think this collaboration between government agencies and businesses, what are the things, what are the incentives, and how would you just want to summarize this?
Yeah, I think maybe speaking from the business perspective, and again, my background is more like around supporting like engagement, private sector engagement with government. And one of the frustrations we see is that like sometimes they're speaking at each other, like, or across each other, and instead of with each other or co-creating. And I think there would be exceptional value if there's a closer, first of all, I don't think there needs to necessarily be new standards. I think what you talked about, having like simplified standards or simplification of implementation would be much better. And opening up, like having the space to talk a little bit more about how we leverage existing institutions, whether they're public or private, to support implementation of those policies, I think would be like really, really incredible tools, like in industry self-regulation, leveraging those more, because there is an administrative capacity in many industry associations, I think is something that is underexplored in this market. And yeah, but I could probably go on and on, so I will save everyone. But I really think just more openness to co-creation will, I think, yield really substantial results on implementation.
Awesome. Mr. Jonathan?
So I think there are quite a couple of existing policies, in fairness, right? But I would advance or advocate rather for consistency in the policies, right? I could just give you an example. So you find that in the country now, so Lagos State made an attempt to have something on a single use plastic ban, right? But the interesting thing is that that's not consistent across the entirety of the country. So if you have a situation where you run a business like that, then you have a challenge with running or making sales in Lagos, but you can also find that you can do that in other parts of the country, right? So those kind of inconsistencies, right? So when you have this kind of policies linked to things around the environment or pollution, government has to have some sort of integration to ensure that there's consistency, right? So that when you have these policies, I would advocate for some of these policies being national rather than it being at the level of different states. That's the first thing. I also think that there could also be a lot around financials too in itself too, right? So that you can find policies that can stimulate businesses from a financial standpoint, because at the end of the day, ultimately businesses want to be profitable.
Yeah.
So whether it speaks to things like tax breaks, tax holidays, moratorium periods sometimes, or government funded grants, I think those kind of policies in itself can help. I also think that capacity building too is also a fantastic where we should see policies supporting businesses, from that perspective as well.
Awesome, awesome. So we're not just saying that, we're not just holding businesses by the jugular and saying that you're responsible, but because we know that this is the bane and there's actually a root cause to why we have these emissions from businesses, because it's really due to inadequate supply of power, industrial waste, and even the standards that we've actually said not being consistent and not also following up implementation. What I hear both of you saying is that we need collaboration. There has to be like incentives, moratorium, tax breaks, and a whole lot of things and the consistency of the message across the different states. So it's not different from Lagos to Abuja and from Abuja to River State, for instance. Thank you so much. I think my final question to my two panelists this afternoon would be on solutions or technologies that you believe would hold the most promises for businesses, based on your research, based on your engagement, interaction, and also from a global perspective, which solutions, which technologies do you believe that will hold the most promise for businesses aiming to reduce pollution and to improve sustainability? Can I start with you, Mr. Jonathan?
All right, very good. I think that you spoke about solar and renewable energy. I think that that's always going to be something that will have a lot of promise for our economy here in Nigeria, right? So investing in renewable energy, I think technologies like that can amplify renewable energy source. Things like solar, even wind or hydropower, I think that will always be strong. I also think technologies that are linked to transportation, right? Because I think Dr. Natalie mentioned that transport contributes to carbon emissions. So electric vehicles is something that is quite big right now. And I think that I see quite a couple of that technology infrastructure here. So are people happy to invest in things like charging stations, charging infrastructure? I know that Lagos State government has also muted the idea, or if not currently happening, of having like some of their mass rapid transportation leveraging electric vehicles. So technology solutions that sort of amplify that work around electric vehicle usage in the country, I think that would also be very good. I think also technologies that can help with waste management. Waste management is quite very big across the country, right? So there are different forms of use cases where you can find technology help. It could even be simple things like even with pollution control, right? So, the beautiful thing with technology that speaks to innovation a bit more. So I think if you ask me where holds the biggest problems, I think renewable and, renewable energy, whether it's solar or wind, I think will always be strong. I think transportation technologies that allow for sustainable transportations, whether that's electric vehicles or other options, right? I think that would always be strong. Then I think waste management, technologies that address critical issues in waste management was something that will really redefine pollution management in the country.
Right, awesome. Dr. Natalie, any other input from you?
Yeah, maybe just like, I guess as an addendum, because I think it's true, like the technologies that Jonathan shared, yeah, these would be ideal, but the challenge is always how do we afford them? How do we make them accessible? And how do you create the business model so that they can persist and be really relevant? So I think the innovation also needs to be thought about, not just in terms of the hardware or technology, but around the social organization or the business model organization that enables Nigerians to access those solutions. And so that's where I would emphasize that the needs are, because the technologies are a dime a dozen in a way. They're there already.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, thank you so much. I think that brings me to the end of my own questions. I would like to go to the Q&A section of this and then check if we have any questions. Please, if you have any questions, please type your questions in the Q&A section. Do not type your question in the chat section, because we're using the Q&A section to address and so that we can collate all of these questions. Yeah, so someone is asking a question on air pollution, and it says air pollution, which is now a ravaged disaster in the world, especially here in River State. So yeah, we have someone from River State talking about air pollution, and he wants to know what are the roles our environmental regulators, what are they doing to bring a door-to-door awareness about it, especially the deforestation increase? Does anybody want to take the question? Between you, Natalie, and just talking about air pollution in River State and what the environmental regulators. So do I have any takers for this question?
So did you want us to just speak to, so the question felt a bit more like, I mean, I could give a generic response in terms
Yeah,
of
so
what
the
are the
person
role
wants to know what the
uh,
regulators are doing. So yeah, I think we might not have the specific question answer. Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
but I could speak to some things that you expect
All right.
them to do. I think public awareness
Yes.
and public education will be something that they do. Specifically, I think River State has quite a couple of these regulators as well too, right? So I think public awareness is something they would do. Specifically, if you speak around deforestation, I know that there's also a plan, even at the level of the country as well too, on a reforestation and afforestation program as well too, to restore some of our degraded forest. Even the land falls under the purview of states as well too, right? So even practices around ensuring that lands are used, responsibly and in a sustainable manner, encouraging things like permaculture, things like agroforestry. I know that's something that many of these institutions and these government agencies also try to advocate for. Even policies as well, so advocating for even policies as well, especially dealing with change, right, in terms of how we view some of our natural resources like our forest and just promoting sustainable use and development, even if that speaks to things like community engagement as well too. I think those are some of the things. Maybe you might add research, right? That more research as well too is also something that these institutions should be investing in, or ideally will be investing in research, data collection, just so that they're able to use data, and insights to be able to effectively advocate for
Yes.
sustainable use of some of these natural resources.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that really just it wasn't generic to me. I think these are some of the things that the government needs to start implementing and they need to look into. We have another question here that says, do you think implementation of green energy policy will be effective, especially when it comes to rural areas that cannot afford it? Natalie, what do you say in terms of mini grid, rural areas, and implementation of green energy policies for people that are barely even trying to survive right now?
I think it depends on the structure. I don't know which policy is being referred to.
Yeah.
So obviously you can't require citizens to purchase or use technologies they can't afford. I haven't observed that. I haven't observed that in green energy regulations, more around like access to energy. So I don't know if it's necessarily an issue in this case, but we do see, and in fact, we were just on a discussion around recycling policy the other day around the expectations for compliance for small like collectors, and this is like the standards are so high that that it's like impossible for SMEs to really comply with them. So it is an issue. In green energy specifically, I'm not aware of it, but in other sectors, it is a problem, and this is where I think an improved dialogue with government can help, where there's better trust between business and government to kind of build those roadmaps to support. I think what Jonathan is talking about, like integrating like capacity building and awareness into a policy roadmap would really, really help. So I looked at the questions on the Q&A. I don't know how qualified I am to answer most of them.
Let me add to that. Let me just add a bit to what Doctor is saying, right? So I think that because your question also linked around to possibility or feasibility of implementing green energy in rural areas in Nigeria. So I think that a couple of factors could speak to the feasibility, but there are quite a lot of challenges, and I think Doctor was trying to highlight that. But I think it's feasible that we can have green energy, right? Given the range of green energy here, I mean renewable energy, solar, wind, etc. I said the feasibility is there because if you think about it, I think that in many rural areas around the world, which also includes Nigeria, power, especially the power grid, is quite decentralized, right? So that also allows for some kind of renewable energy projects that can really speak to them at that smaller scale. I also think something that makes it feasible is that if you engage the rural communities a bit more, you can have something that is a bit locally, something that really fits the particular local terrain in which they operate in. But the point is that it's quite challenging, especially around affordability once you make those investments. So you've got to think about things like infrastructure, right? So transmission lines, storage lines, if you want to have renewable or green energy in rural areas, that's a very big capital expenditure that whoever will be making those investments have got to think about, right? Even financing of this, I mean, financing for green infrastructures in the country is still a challenge. Many businesses find out that it's quite capital intensive, and also the funding sources for some of these things, right? What is the rate, that funders will expect if they fund you on renewable or green energy projects like that? I also think sometimes too that we're actually still trying to deal with issues around building sufficient technical capacity to actually support some of these projects post when they actually become implementable, if we have them in the green or in the rural areas. So those will be some things I see, right? But the point here is that it's possible. The nature of the power grid structure across nations, and more important in Nigeria, is such that power is decentralized. So that's an incentive enough, right, to find that in the rural areas you can have something a bit more very peculiar to their terrain from a green energy standpoint.
Right. Awesome. Wow, thank you very much. I would like to bring this conversation to a close. I know that this is not the end of this conversation. I mean, because we're talking about businesses, we're talking about emissions, we're talking about pollution, and a whole lot of things that are very important to us as human beings, our health and all of that, and of course and sustainability. So I know that the conversation is going to continue. We're going to carry on the conversation from here. But I would like to ask if you have any final words, any final notes for us today. And I would go again. Ladies first, and the ladies will definitely go last. Yes, we're bringing the ladies to the front. So yeah, Dr. Natalie, if you have any final words on this topic, maybe you can just
No, I think really a vote of thanks to this session. It's a topic that I think doesn't get enough the attention it deserves. So we're really grateful. It's also not an issue that's going to be resolved in one meeting. It takes concerted action, and so we're really, really grateful to the organizers for this event, and look forward to many more engagements to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan.
Two things. I think the first one is collaboration is still very critical. Collaboration with stakeholders is still very critical in dealing with pollution, dealing with carbon emission, from the perspective of businesses to the government. Key stakeholders, we've all got to work together so that we can come up with innovative solutions, right? And also because businesses are, to be honest, are the heart of many of these conversations, right? So I also think that businesses themselves must also think innovatively around how they might come up with solutions that would help them with reducing their own emissions, right? Whether that's leveraging technology or even going for natural-based alternatives, right? I think that businesses have got to think about how they can innovate around coming up with cost-effective solutions to help them deal with their own emission. But collaboration is still going to be critical in addressing this. And as like Dr. Natalie said, it's still going to be a conversation that will be happening over time. But I think collaboration must really sit at the bedrock of what we are doing.
Awesome. So we have cooperation, we have collaboration, we have profit, and we have good health. And on that note, I would like to call this panel to a close. I'd like to bring this panel to a close, and I'd like to say thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan. Thank you, Dr. Natalie. Your passion, Mr. Jonathan, just taking us through carbon credits and accounting, and just breaking it down into very simple terms, and also just giving us just ideas on what the government can do. And Dr. Natalie, just drawing from your wealth of experience and, from the research and, you just talking about startups that are doing a whole lot in the Nigerian climate, in this space in terms of innovation and the technologies that we can adopt. And we'd like to say thank you for joining us on the Polcon discussion today. Thank you very much. And over to you, Ms. Wumi and Ms. Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was an interesting panel session. Thank you, Dr. Natalie. Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. Thank you, Dr. Falola. And thank you for thank you our viewers. I can see some interesting comments in the comment section, and one which I would like to say is our children too must be aware from their schools, and it's very important to enlighten and educate our children as well. So I will be inviting the convener to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought we are sharing screen. Thank you so much. I think this is, yes, so we have definitely come to the end. Honestly, I can't thank everyone enough for, staying tuned. And, we had so many people join. And of course, we still have a lot of people still on the call at this time. So I just want to quickly use this opportunity to say thank you to all our distinguished guests, all our speakers, our panelists, our attendees, and thank you for, we've come to obviously the close of this very inspiring, insightful conversation, the conversation all of the way from the panel discussion, Dr. Agnes sharing all the stuff, all the things that they need to do about what she's doing about maternal health, all the impacts on all of us, just want to say a deep thank you and express, my gratitude for everyone. And we couldn't have done this without any of you. Thank you all so much, Dr. Agnes, Dr. Femi, Dr. Natalie, Dr. Tomi, Dr. Jonathan, Tolu, Adeshola, and my host, and everyone that's been a part of it. Your knowledge, your expertise, and your passion has truly driven this conversation forward. Your contribution today has definitely highlighted the urgency of addressing air pollution and providing us all with very actionable steps, collaboration, driving the conversation forward towards a cleaner, healthier future. And, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And of course, our keynote who couldn't make it, but was ably represented by Mrs. Osho. Thank you also so much. And I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our partner for Polcon this year, EduMac. They were very instrumental in making sure that today was successful. Without your support and the commitment to Polcon 2024, it would not have been a success. So thank you so much. And finally, for everyone that was able to join us today, thank you for taking out time in, 2 hours, 20 minutes of your time to join us today. Thank you, your presence, your engagement, your contribution. I know we were not able to take some of the questions, but please, you can share with us email, and we'll promise to be able to get back to you on some of those questions, burning questions that you may want to have. And, and it's because of you, we are here and we are growing and we are making impact. And I will say Polcon is not just a conference, it's a movement. And like we've all heard today from all our panelists, these are conversation starters, and we hope to continue. And it's obviously with that excitement that I'm also announcing that we'll be hosting the Polcon UK 2025 next year, and I'm sure we can see from the screen. And of course, it's a testament to the importance of what we are doing, the mission, and everything that we're looking to achieve. So as we draw and close Polcon 2024, I encourage us all to carry on the conversation, the solution discussed here today, into our homes, into our communities, into our workplace, and into our everyday lives. We've learned so much, particularly about air pollution and how that affects us, and also even the emission that we also generate from even our businesses, and that also how that contributes into the constant emission into the air. So, let us be the spark and let us take continued action towards achieving cleaner air and a sustainable future. And on that note, I thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you at the Polcon UK and the next edition of Polcon. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I
you,
don't know if any of
Wumi.
our
Thank you,
speakers
everyone.
also, if you want to say anything, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
All our panelists,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you all so much for
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you, everyone.